Well, welcome everyone. Delighted to have you here on this rather gloomy day for numerous reasons. My name is Fiona Morley. I'm the Head of Digital Programs and Information Systems at Maynooth University Library, and Dr. Elaine McCarthy of the Research Development Support Office and Ciarán Quinn, our Research Support Librarian in Maynooth University Library, are also joining me on this talk today. So we're going to be speaking to you about the importance of having an Orchid ID and to create a unique digital identity, control your scholarly profile and promote your research. So just before we get into Orchid itself, I just want to talk to you a little bit about the Irish Orchid Consortium, which is quite new and obviously reflects on the importance that is now being given to Orchid in the national discourse, if you like. So the consortium was established in March 2020, and it was informed by research conducted by the National Open Research Forum. And in their own words, the consortium recognises the use of unique and persistent identifiers for entities in the research ecosystem. It is essential for the development of an internationally competitive research infrastructure for Ireland. And they believe that efficiencies are to be gained from the use of common exchange formats, and that Orchid is considered to be the best option for identifying researchers and contributors due to its open and non-proprietary nature. And the strengths of Orchid are best exploited by taking a coordinated national approach to adoption. So the consortium operates from the IRL office, which is located in Maynooth University, and the link is there if you want to have a look and read a little bit more about them. So within the consortium, there is an IRL Open Scholarship Officer, Dr. Catherine Ferris, and she is responsible for the day-to-day management of the consortium. And her role includes managing and supporting the onboarding of new members, developing shared resources, communications, materials and events, and working with the community to identify goals, develop policy and governance, and produce progress reports. The Irish Orchid Steering Group sets the strategic agenda for the consortium, and membership is open to higher education, non-profit organisations and government research and funding agencies located and organised under the laws of Ireland. Maynooth University obviously is a consortium member, and basically the Open Scholarship Officer will work with different contact points across all the consortium members. So I'm the contact point for Maynooth University, and I work with Dr. Ferris in terms of progressing the goals of the consortium. So at this stage, I'm handing over to Ciarán, who's got lovely, colourful slides, unlike mine. So Ciarán's going to talk to you a bit more about Orchid itself and the benefits of Orchid.
Okay, so I'm going to look at why is Orchid important. So the main thing with Orchid is that it provides you with a unique author identifier that's controlled by you and linked to your name rather than your institution. So what that basically means is, rather than in other databases, for example, like Web of Science and Scopus, you can have a number of different author identities. So you could have a single name, a married name, a double-barreled name, a name with your full first name or initials. Whereas in Orchid, you're in complete control of your identity. So you decide what your identity is, and then you attach all your research publications to that identity. So you have the control rather than another database controlling what articles are attached to your identity. So it's going to keep details of all your research in one place, provides an accurate reflection, giving you full credit for your contribution of your research output. So if you want one place where all your research is gathered together under your author identity, this is what you need. So you can, and it's something you can control yourself. It's also multidisciplinary, multilingual. So rather than certain databases might just cover certain subject areas or certain languages, you're controlling it. So you can put all your papers in, and if they're in different languages, that doesn't matter. You can attach all those as well. The likes of Scopus or Web of Science will only probably index a portion of your work. So it'll be based on whatever journals they index within those databases. They're quite extensive, but they're not going to be comprehensive. So there's always going to be probably papers that aren't included. Google Scholar is great, very comprehensive, but there are issues around data quality, but even then it's not going to cover all of your papers. So with an Orchid ID, you can attach all of your papers to that one ID and then make use of that. So effectively, Orchid can be used to track your full research output. So other benefits of Orchid. So when you set up an Orchid account, it's going to give you a unique Orchid ID, and you can attach them to anything you produce or published. And this number they give you, it stays constant. It'll stay with you through your life. No matter if you change institutions, you're still going to have your unique author identity. And you can include it, for example, if you're submitting manuscripts for publication or applying for grants. And so that means obviously the people who receive it will be able to go into that link and see exactly what you have published, what your research output has been, and you can be sure it's an accurate reflection of your publications. You can also do things like you could link it to your name and ID number and to anything they produce, using their Orchid record. You could use it in CVs, so there's functions in there, so you can add in your educational attainment, your employment, any distinctions you have, memberships you have, funding you have. They can all be collated in there, and you decide then what people can see. So, for example, a lot of people just have it set so you can just see your publications. But then if you're applying for funding, you can let them see maybe some more extensive details. To put your articles into Orchid, very straightforward. You can export them directly from Scopus, from Web of Science. If you're using AOR-XIV, you can export straight from there. If you're using PubMed, if you have digital object identifiers for your papers, you can add that in, and it'll pull in the details of your papers. You can also import using BibTeX. BibTeX you'll often find in reference management tools. So it's just a format you can export, say, from EndNote or Mendeley or whatever reference management tool you're using. Or if all else fails, you can just add them manually. So if you don't have them electronically somewhere, you can just it'll give you a template, and you can just put in the details of your publications yourself. So how do you get one? So as simple as you sign up for an Orchid account. So just Google for Orchid, and you'll find that link. You register with them, and that automatically then give you your Orchid identity. So that's going to be your unique number. You use your Orchid ID. Okay, so this is if you're applying for, say, manuscript submission or so on. You can use that Orchid ID, and you can share your Orchid ID with people as well. Okay, and what that means in reality is you'll have an account that looks something like this. So this is a researcher's profile. So if this guy here, Dave Gouldson, there's his Orchid ID number. So this is his unique identity number that has been given to him by Orchid. And that's the number you use, if you want to attach it to your emails, if you're submitting a manuscript, if you're applying for funding, you supply that number, and then that relates to the documents that you have saved in Orchid. These other IDs, researcher ID is one from Web of Science, and Scopus is the one from Scopus. So these are the IDs that these databases have assigned to you, and you've imported your references directly from those into Orchid. So that is what it looks like. Then there's also a section for organization. So if that's what you're involved in, you can look at information from an organizational point of view. So for example, if you're a research funder and you wanted to see, what researchers have been doing, you can use that. Research organizations, publishing, they can all kind of go in and look at information. Okay, so this is just a short video. If you want to watch that at some point, you can have a look at that. And that's actually from the Orchid website as well. So if that link isn't working, you can just go into the Orchid website, and they'll have a lot of additional kind of training material. Okay, so that's me.
Okay, thank you, Ciarán, for that. So just following on from what Ciarán has highlighted there in terms of the benefits of having an Orchid ID, one other thing to point out, it's important for a lot of the funding agencies now, is they require as mandatory an Orchid ID for submitting applications. So today I'd like to just briefly talk about how you can link in your Orchid account with your RIS account. So as you'll be aware, Maynooth University Research Information System is an excellent way to provide an external view of your research and your research activities. So to log on to RIS, you just go to the For Staff drop down on the Maynooth University website, and you log in using your username and password. And you'll all be familiar that the profile section allows you to update your research activities, your teaching activities, your publications, and various different elements of your CV. Each one of these can then be pushed out to the website so that you have an external view for people who want to look you up and see what your research is about. So recently we have integrated the Orchid and RIS systems insofar as Orchid can now update your RIS profile. And how you do this is you log in to your RIS account, and on the bar that appears, you just go to the cog on the right-hand side, and I've highlighted it here with a little red circle. And this will open your user preferences. And when you scroll down on this screen, you will see an Orchid integration option. And if you just click on create or connect your Orchid ID, this will allow you to make this integration possible. So what's important to note is that you obviously have to have an Orchid ID set up in order for this to work. Oh, apologies. Okay. So when you click on that link, the Vidatium Academic, the RIS system, will open this screen here, and it'll prompt you to log into your Orchid, which will allow authorization. So when that screen opens, you simply put in your username and password for Orchid, and it will open in Orchid a Vidatium screen that will ask you to authorize that Vidatium Academic can access your Orchid record. And once you click authorize, it'll pop back to RIS, and you'll see here then that unique identifier that Ciarán mentioned is now populated in your RIS profile. So once you see that there, if you click on the synchronize button, it will automatically pull in the records that you've selected in Orchid to pull into RIS. So it's quite straightforward. So just a few little notes in terms of how to pull in individual pieces of data. So for Orchid data to pull across to our RIS system, it must be set to everyone. As a default, I believe it's set to, I'm not sure if it's called hide, but it's not publicly available. So you need to make sure that this little green icon is selected to everyone in order for this detail to be made available so you can pull it into your RIS profile. So once you synchronize, you can choose the RIS records that you want to add. So similar to RIS, there are different categories of data that you can input into your Orchid profile. And some examples here include work, publications and conferences, patents, funding and projects. And this is a simple tick box for you to select that you'd like to pull this information into RIS. So again, once you've ticked the box and you click synchronize in RIS, it will allow that data to be pulled over. One of the key issues, we made sure that, one of the key elements that we wanted to make sure was minimized was duplication. So if you can imagine, you've already got your RIS profile up to date and you've all your publications in there. The last thing we want to do is create a huge duplication exercise, but when you pull in all this information from Orchid into RIS. So what the system does is it will identify, when you add publications to your profile, it will identify where the source is. So you'll have, Orchid will come up in the source box. If you've already pulled this information in from, for instance, Web of Science or Scopus, you will see Orchid, Web of Science and Scopus as the sources for those particular pieces of information. If you do all this setup, come back in 6 months and you've new publications that you want to pull in, when you go into Orchid, you will see that you'll have this in profile. And that will essentially indicate to you that you've already pulled this into your RIS profile, so there's no action to be done. And the only actions that are allowed to be taken are on new publications. So as such, it minimizes any kind of deduplication effort that you might encounter. And that's all I'm going to talk about on that today. But if you have any questions, please do get in touch with me on elaine.mccarthy@mu.ie. Thank you.